In the evening hours of March 12, 1952, a firefight erupted between an American patrol and North Korean forces. That night, one Army medic saved countless lives. Struck twice, the medic refused to leave the battlefield. He continued to direct care of his fellow soldiers until he was the last soldier to evacuate the battle. That soldier posthumously received the Medal of Honor for his deeds on that day, and he remains the only U.S. Army enlisted soldier to have a U.S. Army Medical Center named in his honor. That soldier was Private First Class Bryant Homer Womack. He was born on the 12th of May, 1931, and raised in the tiny hamlet of Mill Spring in Polk County, North Carolina, nestled in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains between Charlotte and Asheville. Growing up during the Great Depression and World War II, Bryant, his three brothers, and one sister lived the typical rural life of the era. As a boy, he and his siblings built and rode wagons down the hills.
We could pull the wagon up into the field and drive down it. And usually on a Sunday afternoon, a lot of the neighbors would come. It became a community up there.
As a teen and young man, Bryant fished and hunted in the local streams and forests.
He loved to farm, he loved to plow mule, he liked to fish and hunt and trout and ride bicycles.
He was very fond of his hound dogs, and he played guitar and banjo with friends and family. The people around Womack Road noted that Bryant had grown into a rather robust young man and a natural leader. There was very little industry in Polk County and the surrounding area. There weren't many opportunities for employment besides working on the family farm. A young man could make 35 cents an hour picking peaches when in season. Bryant and his friends did exactly that, taking a bus down to nearby South Carolina and picking peaches for the orchards along their way back home. Bryant received his draft notice in 1950, in peacetime before the start of the Korean War. The 19-year-old saw that as an opportunity to spread his wings, make out on his own, and start a new life.
And he couldn't get a job, so he decided, well, being that I couldn't get a job, I just joined the Army.
Okay.
So
that way he was a volunteer.
He was a volunteer.
As PFC Womack processed into the medical company, 14th Infantry Regiment, 25th Infantry Division in Korea, there was probably little time for settling in. Soldiers typically were sent into the next patrol their unit participated in. Although assigned to the medical company, he would have been attached to an infantry unit, possibly golf company. These were the soldiers he would train and fight with daily. There is little surviving information, but it is assured that PFC Womack treated fellow troops daily while on patrol or at camp, whether for minor ailments or life-threatening injuries for the next 3 months. It was just as important to the psyche of his fellow soldiers, just that he was available, ready to do what was necessary to patch up them or their battle buddies and, if necessary, get them as quickly as possible to a waiting jeep or helicopter ready to transport them to a mobile Army surgical hospital, commonly known as a MASH unit, or a hospital in Japan or the States. In the evening hours of March 12, 1952, at a small Korean town, Sakso-ri, that may have been east of the infamous Punch Bowl, a small patrol with likely 40 to 50 men was charged with probing the enemy lines. His citation for the Medal of Honor describes what occurred on that mission.
Private First Class Bryant Homer Womack distinguished himself by conspicuous gallantry above and beyond the call of duty in action against the enemy. PFC Womack was the only medical aid man attached to a night combat patrol when sudden contact with a numerically superior enemy produced numerous casualties. PFC Womack went immediately to their aid, although this necessitated exposing himself to a devastating hail of enemy fire, during which he was seriously wounded. Refusing medical aid for himself, he continued moving among his comrades to administer aid. While he was aiding one man, he was again struck by enemy mortar fire, this time suffering the loss of his right arm. Although he knew the consequences should immediate aid not be administered, he still refused aid and insisted that all efforts be made for the benefit of others that were wounded. Although unable to perform the task himself, he remained on the scene and directed others in first aid techniques. The last man to withdraw, he walked until he collapsed from loss of blood and died a few minutes later while being carried by his comrades. The extraordinary heroism, outstanding courage, and unswerving devotion to his duties displayed by PFC Womack reflect the utmost distinction upon himself and uphold the esteemed traditions of the United States Army.
According to the National Archives, the 14th Infantry Regiment suffered 5 killed or missing in action and 3 seriously wounded on that date. That means there were likely 14 to 30 total wounded and possibly more. Undoubtedly, the actions of PFC Womack on that day and the many other days while he served in Korea saved countless lives of soldiers who continued to fight the war, came home, rallied around their families, and contributed greatly to the backbone of the United States of America. Bryant's sister Rachel was the only person home when the official notification of his death was received.
Yes, Blue Ridge Taxi in Boston come and told me that he was killed. My mom and daddy had gone to get groceries. Well, I had to tell mom and daddy when they come back home about it. It was hard. It was hard. Yes, it's hard. His buddy that Bryant was standing over when Bryant lost his right arm and his side. His Lieutenant Willett says, if I live to get out of this place, says I'll hunt his parents up and talk to them. And he was the one that told us about the Medal of Honor. And said Bryant didn't touch the ground. Said his buddies picked him up and carried him. He died of loss of blood.
In North Carolina, there are several remembrances to include monuments and buildings dedicated in Polk and Rutherford counties, and the State Korean War Memorial in Mint Hill. The original Womack Army Community Hospital on Fort Bragg was dedicated on August 3, 1958. Bryant's family attended the dedication. The original building had 500 beds in a 9-story facility. This building now houses the Soldiers Support Center. Nearly 42 years after the original Womack Hospital was dedicated, the new Womack Army Medical Center ribbon-cutting and dedication ceremony took place at the east entrance of the Medical Center on March 9, 2000. The hospital serves the nearly 10% of the Army's active component forces who are assigned to Fort Bragg, along with their family members and retirees who continue to call the surrounding area home. Fort Bragg is one of the busiest military complexes worldwide. Home to the Army's Airborne and Special Operations Forces, as well as U.S. Army Forces Command and the U.S. Army Reserve Command. In keeping with the spirit of PFC Bryant Homer Womack, the Medical Center continues to maximize the medical readiness of the force by providing the highest quality health care. Just like our namesake, we strive to reflect the Army values: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage in all we do.